Hi, I'm Alan Furley, Director and Owner of ISL Recruitment. Now, our business is all about people. Ambitious tech businesses trust us to help them grow by finding great talent for their business. And personally, I'm passionate about two things, which is helping scale-ups grow and learning from others. So our aim with this content, the Scaleup Diaries, is to share the best bits about people and companies that we admire, helping everybody that we know in the tech startup and scale-up community on their individual journey. Inevitably, a lot of that's going to be focused on the people and the people within the businesses. So the people like we've got today, Alex, a leader of a business, and also the people within the business, talking about how to find the best talent and maximize their potential and retain the high performers. So if you're interested in key strategies and lessons to help you grow, then hopefully the Scaleup Diaries is for you. So as mentioned, my guest today is Alex Packham, founder and CEO of ContentCal. So Alex, welcome along. Thank you very much for taking the time. It'd be great to start by getting an introduction to you and the business and understanding a bit about the background there.
Yeah, absolutely. Great to be on, and great to be doing this. So I'm Alex. I founded and run ContentCal. Personally, my background has always been very entrepreneurial. If I go back to sort of the typical like where did it all start type moment. I've been selling stuff in the playground since the age of 14, if you know what I mean, if you go way back kind of thing. But I always had that entrepreneurial blood within me. I got into social media marketing, I suppose, when it became a thing. So I'm a dinosaur in this industry, if that's even a thing. So when I was at uni, 11-ish years ago, got very into the concept of how Facebook, Twitter, etc. were kind of influencing my own purchasing decisions. Mainly going to bars, restaurants, or other stuff like that at uni and having a good time with that. And then as I was studying business management and marketing and stuff like that at the time, really got into the concept of, okay, is this a thing? Is, having a Facebook page or having a business social media account going to become a commercial, thing for a company to kind of do for their marketing purposes? I went down lots of cool rabbit holes around that space and basically started what you would probably consider to be a sort of freelance / small social media agency when I was at uni, which was really good fun, and spent much more time on that than I should have versus my studies, but did complete and did made a little lifestyle business out of that, I guess. And then I basically built, a career in that space. So I was the first social media exec at Odeon Cinemas, big brands, great experience, and brought some of those skills, that kind of digital native, social native kind of skills to that business for a couple of years. And then I worked at Now TV as their social media manager for about 2 years as well, when that business was just starting, and did lots of other freelance bits in between of those, kind of keeping your entrepreneurial spirit going. Left Now TV to start a social media agency called ASTP, which is a very lazy name. It's my initials. I just wanted to get something going and build a business, that was not just me, like I did at uni, kind of build something with team, processes, clients, etc. And was very lucky that Odeon and Sky in some capacity were the kind of two founding clients of that, and lots of other kind of businesses along the way. And then ContentCal was almost span out of that, really. So I had a sort of separate mindset and a separate track around building a software business, but I was sort of 23, 24 at the time. So the whole concept of like raising capital and building, that style of company was quite alien, and it's a different style of challenge. So I won't go into all the details, but built it as a sort of separate MVP, and we got some initial traction through me going again back to Sky and Odeon and the agency clients, and then ever since then, really, that's sort of 2016, been building the company from there. And there's lots of stories and tales within that journey, really.
Yeah, it'd be great definitely to explore a bit more about how that journey's kind of evolved over the last 4 years or so. In terms of you mentioned about that kind of entrepreneurial spirit being there, and that sales aspect to some of what you might have done at a very young age. But if you're thinking about the drive to set up, to found the business, I guess different things for different people. What was it that, if you're reflecting back now on why you really wanted to own your business?
There's quite a few things to that, really. I mean, the dynamic of, being in business, whether that's sales type stuff, whether it's kind of meeting interesting people, crafting your own freedom and path was a big driver, and still is for me now, really. Kind of, I've always been a bit of a free spirit on an individual basis, not for any, like, I can't give you a tangible reason why, but I've always wanted to do my own thing, if that makes sense, whatever I've been in. So, when you look at your options for jobs and careers, building your own business is about as freeing and as liberating as you can get in reality. So I really kind of focused on that as a path. I think the other thing is, if you want to, there's commercial elements to it. Obviously, if you can build a big successful business, whatever that may be, you're going to have hopefully a great life and a great, life experience that attaches to that, which is full of variety and meeting lots of interesting people. And I'm very ambitious. I mean, I enjoy the tough challenges. I don't, we will have good days and bad days, obviously, but I can't just coast, if that makes sense. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but whether it's lucky or unlucky, I've got quite an intellectual brain. I like to learn stuff, not just do entrepreneurial business stuff. So it doesn't stop ticking. And I think, again, kind of attacking on your own natural feeling, doing a business and creating a company is about as challenging as, you can get in your career. So yeah, it was all those things really, kind of all those like inquisitive, journeys, and just a lot of mentorship. When I decided to start my own business, I didn't go it alone, and I never have. I've never had that attitude. I'm a big believer in working with great people and finding great people to advise you. And I actually just found that very early on, I really enjoyed all that stuff at the end of the day. So it's as much for me as enjoyable. It is about the challenge and kind of the journey, basically.
Okay, great. No, good to hear. And if you're kind of articulating the journey of ContentCal so far, then how would you kind of see it, and how has it evolved over the last few years?
A crazy journey. I mean, I remember when I first started out and thought about this and asked other business owners, how do you get from A to B, whatever B is, whether it's building or selling or just creating your company in general. And they always would say, look, there's no one journey. It's very, very difficult for anyone to answer that because everyone's is the same. And I remember when I first started, again, kind of trying to attach that to what you read in the press, like how companies are built and everything else. It seemed very like, well, the press make it out like this is very formulaic and simple, whereas actually everyone says it's this, wild ride, basically. And that's exactly how I describe it. I've always tried to approach business in general by setting quite clear goals, objectives, and things you want to achieve, and also understanding where you're at on your own personal journey, but where your business is at, it's on its kind of maturity journey as well, so you can contextualize it. So kind of morphing an agency, for example, into a software business is something that I now can kind of summarize it as. I mean, that's fundamentally what this journey was. It was building an agency to learn the fundamentals of business and hiring and invoicing and all the normal stuff. And then at some point along the journey, like I said, decided that ContentCal was actually going to be the main part of the business, and we pivoted into that over time. So yeah, like any company, we've had some great times, and right now this year, I have to say, it's been from a business perspective, huge for us. The kind of shift online has really happened this year. So for lots of obviously terrible reasons, but it has really happened. So we've had some good growth this year. But like every business, you go through lots of ups and downs. So yeah, wild ride, I suppose, so far, and hopefully lots more years to come on that front.
And those challenges you envisaged and kind of referenced at the start, that was part of really the appetite for doing this and building something. Then I'm interested to kind of understand the challenges you thought would be there. I'm sure some of them have been there in abundance, and others have crept up. But what would you say have been the key challenges along that journey?
I think because I was very young when I started, you basically succeed through raw energy and raw passion and raw just going for it, if that makes sense. And you're completely fearless in your approach. So I think that can get you so far in an entrepreneurial journey, and not just being young, but just having that drive. Because no matter how old you are when you start, if you've never run a business before, it's a whole new journey anyway. So it has to be driven off that raw passion and energy, for example. I think that when you get to a certain size and scale, and actually in software, you've proved your product market fit, for example, that you've got past some of those challenges, the scaling bit and the growing bit, you can't do that off raw passion and energy. You need a lot of that, don't get me wrong, but then as we were just sort of saying before we started, like, you do need processes, you do need, people that have got much more knowledge in certain fields than you as the entrepreneur have. So the game completely changes. And I think, that's probably the biggest challenge that I would say in reality is from an entrepreneur who kind of goes from starting and wants to carry on into running the company. Every 6 months to a year, your role and your company changes, and you've got to be able to adapt to that mentally and work out the bits that you should let go of and work out the bits you should focus on and figure all that stuff out. So I would say that, that's the challenge really. It's that there is no one clear path, as I said, and everything changes for that individual every sort of 6 months to a year, which really does mean that your entire way that you do things needs to change. So staying on top of it and staying passionate and energized is tough sometimes, let's be honest, but finding ways to do that, finding ways to reinvigorate yourself and just carry on basically, and try and enjoy it as much as you can, get the growth and the success bit as well.
So diving into the detail on that, what are the things that you as an individual and you as a leader of the business do to keep that energy there and to keep making sure that inevitably, anybody else is going to have bad days, but okay, it's making sure that they're not knocking you back. There's something that you're however you're dealing with it, you're moving on from them and making the next day positive. So what is it that you think you do to help with that?
Yeah, there's a big thing around framing the whole experience, right, mentally. So this is for me personally anyway. You have to basically have the mindset, and however you decide to do this and regulate yourself on it, that it is a journey, that, although you're the person who started it and you're running it, and ultimately the buck stops with you whether things go well or not, you can't get everything right, and you shouldn't expect yourself to do so. The game, again, like I said, it changes, but when you get to a certain stage, getting more things right than wrong is actually what it is about. It's not about, like I said, being completely perfect in every facet. So that's one big thing. I think learning the art of delegation, learning the art of management, learning how to be the sort of phrase, candid and open with people, but also foster the right cultural energy and feeling within the organization and stuff like that is really critical. And just staying on top of things, you can't stop learning at the end of the day in this sort of role. Once you've gone through one experience of building a business and stuff like that, you do have the ability to kind of use the learnings that you've got, just do that on and off, and take those learnings forward basically, so that you yourself can grow. So that's how I see it really. And I think as soon as you stop deciding you don't want to grow in this role anymore, if you kind of think, actually I've gone as far as I can with it, then that might not be it might be time to move on to something else. But yeah, it's mindset, to be honest, and it's how you approach it and having a system to do that basically.
On the learning side of thing in particular, I know in terms of my personal journey, I've gone from being pretty good at recruitment to having a period where I'm now comfortable and a lot better at running a recruitment business. But that transition in the middle was one that I can look back on now and see that I really wasn't still learning, or I was assuming perhaps that being good at recruitment would automatically mean I was good at running a recruitment business, and clearly that wasn't the case. And definitely some of the skills that may be good at recruitment would conflict with my ability to run a business well, whether it was recruitment or technology or a charity, whatever it may be. So I've definitely felt over the last few years that being much more conscious of how I learn, how I develop, and having a bit of a system for that has really helped me cope with the bad times, or make sure that I'm comfortable that it's not about getting everything right. It's just about a good balance between right and wrong, and learning from the failures rather than classifying them as losses entirely. From a learning point of view, that seems to be something that's obviously key to you, and you've mentioned a couple of times. What works particularly well from you from a learning or a development point of view to keep on top of things?
Yeah, there's a few things really. Like I'll decide every year or every 6 months or so what I need to try and get better at, and therefore learn more about. And I'm quite self-critical, I suppose, on that front, and quite conscious. And there's a fine balance to doing that versus kind of being the leadership character. You have to play both roles. When you've got views and opinions on things and you really believe them, you must reinforce them and put them forward. It doesn't mean that that's the way something's going to go, but there's that bit. And then there's learning that sometimes actually, like I said, you're not the right person to make this decision, or you're not, you don't have enough experience in this area to do this. So I think sort of coming up with the themes and the kind of areas that you have personally, and being really honest with yourself is critical. What you're good at, and what you think you're good at, and what you're not. So kind of getting your head around that, and then getting feedback. People tend to forget, when you go through like a more normal one-to-one process, when you're giving a one-to-one because you're managing people, you sometimes forget to do something similar for yourself. Getting direct feedback from people that you work with in terms of your peers, getting feedback from the rest of the team, how the business is improving or needs to change or whatever it may be. And I've always surrounded myself with people, like I said, more experience from like an advisory capacity. So the people on our board or some of our investors who became mentors to me, I would go to them and say, well, here's a challenge I've got. And they would very clearly identify, well, it's a challenge because you either don't know enough about it and you should, or it's a challenge because actually you shouldn't really be involved in this. You need to find someone who's an expert. So it's just having the thirst for it, really. And once you've got that and you work out, like I said, what you can do by yourself and what you need others to help input, you can, again, try and create a framework for your learning and your growth as an individual.
I don't know about you, but I definitely remember as a child kind of getting the message that you need to develop your weaknesses and plug the gaps there. But it sounds like probably you're comfortable if you've got gaps, then it's about plugging them, not necessarily through trying to be the best person on all the areas yourself, but actually surrounding yourself with good people and
Yeah.
maximizing their strengths rather than worrying about your gaps.
100%. Yeah. And I was told that very clearly, you know, again, from some mentors that I had when I first started out. And that's the real approach that makes things work. You know, at a certain size and scale, your role, as in my role, like a founder, entrepreneur, CEO, character, is actually to bring great people on the journey fundamentally. Yes, there's lots of other stuff, but that is so critical if you want to build a big scalable business. It's not about your ability, like I said, to write code in a great way, plus do the sales, plus do this. It's not about that at all. It's energizing other people to want to come on the journey and, you know, use their very valuable time and their expertise to build a good business as well. It's huge. It's the only way to succeed, in my opinion.
And you mentioned about going through kind of milestones and changes every 6-12 months. Thinking about this year, I mean, there's been change there for all of us. I know you had a pretty significant milestone in terms of validating what you'd done so far with the investment from Fuel Ventures early on this year. I think it was £2.5 million beginning sort of quarter. So I guess probably in terms of how that's played out, we can talk about that in a minute. And it's probably been different than it might have envisaged, and positive in some ways and challenging in others. But actually getting to that point, that milestone, how important was that for you personally and for the business, do you think, in terms of, I guess, partly validation, but also then further support as you look to scale and grow?
I mean, it's critical. Yeah, it's a really good question. It's critical. Like when you're building a technology business and unless you've done it, unless you've looked into it, kind of look at how it's modeled and how these companies, you know, become really big. I mean, and a lot of people would find it obviously baffling. You know, you could go on for years and years losing money, but creating mass revenue streams and expanding products and all the rest of it to eventually find a way to either break even or profitability, and then you either float or get acquired. But when you look at the actual nuts and bolts of it, if you can build a platform and a SaaS style business or marketplace or whatever it is, but basically something that has got potentially huge scale to it, it's the only way to do that really in what we would consider a reasonable pace of time. You know, if you wanted to build a business quite quickly, or if you wanted to do that because you wanted the experience of a fast growth company, whatever it is, you can obviously decide to do it over a longer period of time. But, you know, once in your life, maybe twice, you might get an idea like this that truly can do this. So for me, raising money, for example, we raised about 2.5 a bit more than 2.5 from angels, kind of to get us to that bit, if that makes sense, which was a very different journey to where we've done in the last year or so with Fuel, or 6 months, 9 months, a year. So you know, getting VC funding at that level very much validates your experience and your journey. And you know, you've got people who are, again, super intelligent. The guys at Fuel are amazing, and they've gone, well, that does have the potential to go, you know, gangbusters, and the team is really good, and we're going to, you know, place a very large bet on it, but it's an educated bet and they've measured the risk, etc. So it helps you validate, you know, from my perspective, the idea, again, the team, etc. I was always a big believer in our earlier stage, just before we had it, that we were going to get there. It was just a matter of how. But yeah, no, it was huge, both for the company, both for me individually. I think, you know, from anyone who's doing this thing in perhaps the earlier stage where you haven't got to that milestone, the best advice I had, or kind of look back on, is that when you're raising money like that, you're looking for a market of one, really. You know, you could meet 100 potential investors and they may or may not invest for so many different reasons. You only need one to make it work at the end of the day, and you just need to kind of get that opportunity and hope that it pays out. And so there's an element of luck combined with obviously all the other stuff. So yeah, huge validation, and it's completely changed the business, put it that way.
Brilliant. And jumping onto the people side of things, I was talking to some businesses, giving them some advice, those that are looking at raising money, whether it's either seed or Series A, and I think there's a tendency to be very blinkered on well, I'm raising investment, therefore that's really got to be my focus.
Yeah.
I was trying to give them some guidance around, of course that is the case, but perhaps there's some things they could do today, even if they're not raising for 3 or 6 months, that would help them from a people point of view.
Mm-hmm.
So really kind of, I suppose, what's key about your people and talent strategy before you raise, rather than just getting the check and then running out and trying to throw it at some hopefully good hires. Are there things that you did before actually you got the investment coming in to help on the people side of things, or things that looking back you wish you would have done to maximize your chance of finding that great talent to build the business?
Definitely, yeah. I mean, the whole failing to plan, planning to fail piece is factors into this, right? So the big thing we thought about just before we assumed we were getting the money, as we were kind of going through due diligence, is did a number of what we called growth initiatives. So from all the hunches and all the data and all the experience that we had so far, where were the 3, 5, whatever they are, areas we were going to invest in to get the next stage of growth? And, product, technology, marketing, sales, and then there's kind of the finance and the kind of administrational parts of the business, ultimately that all we're going to get a share of this money. And working out how much to put where, which obviously then correlates to how many people you can hire, was really critical. And working out what that sat like from our perspective. We benchmarked it against a number of kind of use cases that, other businesses have done. You look at sort of SaaS playbooks and stuff like that. So you kind of validate those assumptions as much as you can. And then you actually, once you've got those initiatives kind of lined up and the budgets, roughly speaking, you then go into the kind of people piece, as you said, like how many people are you going to need, what level of experience, etc. I think one of the things I would look back and do better than we did is kind of, before you just go on the hiring spree, as you said, which we sort of did do, take a bit of time really putting together what makes a great person at ContentCal. A combination of experience, appetite, attitudes, then the company values, X, Y, and Z. We did kind of have to get on with it because of what's happened this year, partly. But if I was looking back, I'd say let's spend a couple of weeks defining exactly what that looks like before we then go on the hiring spree, so we can actually talk to people and see, do they fit the criteria that we need? So yeah, I would do that basically a bit better. And startups, you can't get everything right, so you kind of tie your parachute on as you jump out, basically, is another funny analogy. But we're doing that stuff now, if that makes sense. But yeah, I think I would have done a bit more on that before we got started.
Yeah, and I think that's definitely sound advice that I would think back on personally, and also from what I've seen other founders of businesses that are kind of scaling, where particularly I think those early stages of business, there might be a bit more of a friends and family appeal to the hiring you've made. So it's people people you have that inherent judgment on. But actually, once you start to bring in new people into new areas and you don't have the benefit of having worked with them before, having an objective system to measure what good looks like, rather than just jumping into, come on, we can't stop and pause because we need great people. Let's look at this finance director or this CTO without agreeing, well, what does a good person look like? And making sure that's for us as a business rather than a generic person based on our values and our culture and what we want to achieve and how we're going to measure it.
Yeah, you're so right, to be honest with you. And I think when you're in the, fast growth, all that sort of phrasing stage, momentum is almost the number one priority. And sometimes actually you forget that you need to take step back or whatever it is, take 2 steps forward. So doing that prep work up front actually makes you go faster. You just don't necessarily realize it at the time. So I totally get that. And yeah, if I was looking back, I'd say that's the number one thing I would have changed in our approach.
You've talked about, so backed by that investment, and then also, the pandemic clearly accelerating the demand for what you're doing. Then you brought new people on board. How's that been, and how have you make sure, particularly we were talking earlier about communication and making sure, I guess, you've got a connection with those people. So how's that kind of played out, and what have you done to make sure that working remotely, virtually, hasn't detracted from bringing great people on board and making sure they feel part of that journey?
Yeah, I mean, one thing I would say is that it's hugely complex at the end of the day, and I think I don't have all the answers to how this will work out. We've done some things right and wrong, but I think when you get a chance to pause and think about, if whenever hopefully you go back to some form of whatever normality is in the future, and you look back at this year and you say, God, it's a lot going on to deal with at the end of the day on this front. So I think the thing is, I would essentially say that, again, if I did the prep work up front and stuff like that, we would have more of a framework to work from. But one of the things we did when we were hiring more people was fundamentally do a lot more interviews. So, in a physical way, you can get different vibes of people and stuff like that. But I would have done it. Well, we did do a lot more interviews online, just because you need longer to talk to people on this sort of style. So you do the kind of proper interview process, then you might have a chat in the second one, then they might meet 2 or 3 other people in the company, then they might meet some more people. So we took our time on each, hire to get it really right, or as right as we could. I think we underestimated the whole online versus physical need. It's really hard to judge, and finding people that have either worked from home a lot before or are really comfortable in that environment. And the fact that it might not change, because let's be honest, we don't really know what's happening at the moment. And it's really hard to go from one culture, which is very office-based, to predominantly online, which we've all had to do, obviously. But, making sure that you're very upfront with people and say, obviously we're remote now. We've taken the decision that we'll be, remote first, probably forever. But we will have physical offices and stuff like that. And then obviously the changing nature of that is also very difficult. So we said that, a little while ago. And then as soon as we were allowed to kind of go out, we gave people the ability that they could have like a Spaces or a Regis pass. So you could go local for a change of scenery, or you could all meet up in X, Y, and Z place, guiding with all the rules and stuff like that, of which people have started to do because they really do want that human interaction. So to be honest, we're still learning as we go and all that. And I think everybody is. But what we had was a good luxury in a way this year, is that we had to grow our people. We were not going to achieve anything that we needed to achieve unless we just got on with it. So like I said, it's kind of good problem to have in these times where you're kind of hiring, more than half your team again. But there are huge challenges along the way in doing that and getting it right, I would say.
Yeah, no, indeed. And I think there's, I know when I've talked to people that have come to interview for my business, then one of the things that always seems to create a great impression with them is, in the couple of minutes before they're waiting to meet with someone, they may be offered a cup of coffee a couple of times. People walking past them are smiling at them. And that's definitely one of the things that I've thought when we're looking to interview remotely, how do you kind of recreate that feel they're getting for the business and the values of it, without the opportunity to get them sat in reception for 2 or 3 minutes before you sit down with the interview, when you're jumping onto a Zoom call and probably you can obviously set the scene and try and break some ice, but probably jumping much more into a functional conversation.
Yeah, it's very hard. I think the thing is, again, we've all probably learned that you need to do that bit first, especially in interview scenarios. You can't just go in. I mean, in the first instance, you might do that because you just haven't kind of got your head around, like you said, the differences. And also from the candidate's perspective, it's very easy to forget, like you said, that they might have done hours of prep, they've done lots of research. They've really wanted this potential role, and you're going in from one Zoom call to another Zoom call, knowing you've got another one afterwards, and you're just rolling like this. So take that time to pause and actually remember the conversation you're about to go into. Make sure people feel comfortable before you go into the actual interview process. And I think the other thing is, working out what role you're hiring for and where they kind of sit in the seniority process, and plan what you're expecting from them, and working out, how that fits, and kind of get, figuring that bit out. But yeah, you're right. You've got to create the normal experience of it, even though it's very not normal. I don't know what the word is for that.
Yeah. What's I guess partly in terms of the nature of your business and very much at the heart of maximizing the value from social media, but also you mentioned there about candidates doing their research beforehand. I think that's definitely something, if I think back to 15, 20 years ago when I came into recruitment, there was a lot less opportunity for candidates to do that research and to, in a way, kind of gravitate towards the businesses that they felt most comfortable with, and also to make them realize that rather than go to that interview, they probably don't want to go and see that company because of what they're seeing online. So I definitely think some of the best companies I've seen, particularly over the last few months where it's been virtual interviewing, have made sure they've got a really a great picture, because that sort of suggests that it's not authentic, but a really clear and transparent picture about what life is like within the business.
Yeah.
So are there particular things that you could see you've done to help paint a picture even before they jump on that Zoom call, to help them understand what life is like and what it isn't like with the business?
Yeah, we have done some things, but probably not a lot is the honest, not enough, sorry, is the honest answer. So I think one of the things I started doing this year, which was, for multiple reasons, is publishing a lot of content on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
If you follow me on there or connected with me, unfortunately, you'll probably see me pop up on your feed every day, pretty much. And we have a process in the system for that. I work with people to help make that happen. And actually, we found that played quite a big role in people either discovering ContentCal as a company to potentially work for, like you said, qualifying based on what I've been saying, whether that's somewhere they want to work or not, and then actually just reaching out to me directly, sending me a LinkedIn message, and then I say thanks very much and pass it on to the right person to speak to if it's not me. So that has been huge actually. And it's kind of that, it's not all about the employee piece because there's lots of other stuff, but it's a big driver of it, and creating you get a very good feel, I would say, if you read 5 of my posts, what it's like to work at ContentCal. I think you get a really good rough idea. I would like us to get better at, the kind of proper employee branding, system, if that makes sense. So, having LinkedIn theme of content that goes out on that basis, and having the right pages on your website and all that stuff. Again, there's always room for improvement in these areas. And I think when you're in the fast growth stage, like I said, you don't, unless you just consciously make that decision, you don't take those steps until you need to. And I think what we found is we've had some amazing people this year, but I would say it's through lots of hard work and huge effort, and also then a two-way dialogue. We can be much better at actually promoting what it's like to work at ContentCal, and therefore kind of allowing people to, like you said, pre-qualify before they might come for an interview or apply. I think there's definitely room for improvement. I think these things, it's funny, every stage you go through, like I said, there becomes a new thing that you haven't thought about. And this is one that, comes up as you start to scale. You realize your success is predicated on your ability to attract and, push talent forward and grow with them. Whereas in the previous phase, like I said, your driver of success is your work and a few others' great work and just getting on with it. It totally changes each stage. So what you do to do that needs to change as well.
And part of that you talked about earlier on is that kind of delegation and making sure you've got the best people around you. Personally, have you found that, I guess, some sort of, entrepreneurs, some founders find it difficult to let go, others find it, something that they actually, it really kind of energizes them and inspires them. So how have you found that part of that process around the delegation, and I guess as part of that, the communication that we were talking about earlier?
I'm a massive delegator, luckily. So in a way, I because in my previous roles, even before starting my business, I managed people. So, and I went through a reasonable, not a lot, but a decent amount of training on that front and how to do that. Obviously, starting your own business is a very different thing, and it's your baby, and it's this, that, and the other kind of thing. But again, like I said, having a lot of mentorship and support from people who have done this before and been successful was always really important to me, to learn the playbook, if you like. And there wasn't a single successful entrepreneurial business person that didn't say to me, your success will come from hiring great people and getting them to run departments and getting out of their way, and motivating them, and obviously playing certain roles and getting other things done. But that is ultimately how you'll succeed. So I've always taken that approach. I think the frustrating thing is, obviously, when you're growing and you're seed funding and this, that, and the other, you can't always afford to pay market rates for some talent, and that's just the way the system is. So that's always difficult. You've always kind of got to work within the restraints of what you can get, if that makes sense, and who you can attract and who you can ultimately afford and incentivize and stuff. So, one of the great benefits of raising large sums of money is that you can then take a step back and say, right, we need this role, this role, this role, this role, and they all need 20 plus years experience. And actually you can have the real dialogue with them about that. So yeah, that's been liberating. To be honest, I would say it's the word liberating for someone like me who doesn't need to do it all and doesn't need to be an expert in everything, and is very happy actually bringing people in and being told what the plan is in that department. I don't need to define the plan for everything. I can do the overall piece and bring everything together, but I would much rather hear someone who knows exactly what they're talking about with more experience than me crafting a plan for marketing and sales or whatever, than me trying to do it from reading some blogs online.
Yeah, 100%. If they've got the skills and the mastery there, then give them the autonomy to make the key decisions, and and make sure you understand what your role in that, I think, is good advice. In terms of either the stage you're at now and that being different to what it would have been 12 months ago, and looking to really scale the business and to build on that success you've demonstrated, but also I suppose what you might have learned and reflected over the last few months through the pandemic. Do you think you'll look for different skills and capabilities in the future? Will it change the nature of the person that becomes a good hire for ContentCal?
Yeah, it definitely will. Like I said, so I would say we're coming from when we closed the deal with Fuel and kind of this year, and like you said, the pandemic and everything that's happened. There's a set, like if I looked at kind of the key things that, like I said, made a great person joining ContentCal, they'll be different now going forward. Really, we're coming every year. We operate on a normal, calendar year, so every year that goes by, like I said, those things will change. So, getting people in this last year has been bringing, like I said, great expertise in certain areas to either get something started and get it moving and professionalize that department, so to speak, and make sure that, you know, one person isn't actually doing 5 person's jobs, which is the typical where is start actually getting those 5 jobs lined out and getting great people in to do them and getting the change around that. I would say we're almost at the stage now where we are what I would classify as the mini org, if that makes sense. So we're not a group of 10 people who all know each other really well. We're a group of nearly 40 who is a mini organization. And what we now have to do is work out the skills, the structure, the way of working, communicating, like you said, and the processes to kind of turn that from a mini org into the mid org, if you want to call it that, however you phrase it. But like I said, every sort of 10 to 20 people that join, everything breaks and everything needs to change and tweak accordingly. And you know, one of the big things I've wanted to do this year is bring some senior people in certain roles that have seen all that before. So for me, obviously, it's new in some way. Now, to be that experience I had there was, you know, it was a huge scale up. It was 40 people, and when I left, it was 1,000. So I saw it happen, but I wasn't constructing it, which I'm very much involved in that now. So yeah, educating yourself around that transitional process and working out what's next is key. So back to my own learnings, you know, I'll be spending at least a month of this year as part of my project saying, well, let's come up with the framework for that rather than just doing it next year and seeing what happens.
And looking to the future, what else does the journey hold for ContentCal and for you in the role you'll play within that growth?
Well, yeah, huge growth, hopefully. I mean, that's the grand plan, obviously. So, you know, when my ambition for the business is to be the #1 platform that drives content marketing for SMEs in the world. You know, it's a big, big vision. And I know that's a huge challenge as well as hugely exciting. And that's how, you know, having that giant vision, you're able to bring great people on because they want to come on a journey like that. You can get investors, etc. So, you know, laser focused on that, becoming the #1 platform in this space for SMEs in the world is absolutely key. And like I said, figuring out how we get there. So more marketing, more sales, more technology, you know, defining stuff, new brand. We've got a ton of things coming in the pipeline, which will help us on that journey. And like I said, keeping the energy high. And you know, I find my role, like I said, changes every year. So again, we're coming to the end of this year. So I'll be working out, you know, what do I need to do next? How do I need to change within that experience and make sure I'm still adding value? Because it's not a given that, you know, as a founder, you're there the whole way through at the end of the day. So I challenge myself to make sure I'm bringing as much to the party as you can. But, you know, just enjoying it as well is really critical. I think, you know, this year probably has made everyone realize, you know, in your roles, obviously in what you do day to day, when your freedoms are taken away in many ways, you must do something you really like and enjoy that gives you energy, doesn't take away. So, you know, I'm really conscious for everybody who joins as well as myself that that's the case. And that we can build a, you know, a thriving organization that's, yes, commercially successful, but also just a great place to work and be really proud of. So yeah, that's the kind of I don't know, a long-winded version of saying lots more growth and exciting stuff to come, basically.
Yeah, brilliant. No, I think that part around the journey not being the means to an end, but actually being an end in itself is something that massively resonates with me. You know, I think I'll like you, you know, I enjoy the positives and to a certain extent the negatives running my business, in that I know that I'll have good days, I'll have bad days, but actually what I don't want to have is a day where I don't look forward to doing what I'm doing, you know, even if I know there'll be challenging ones. And I think part of that is actually running the business in a certain way, being a great place to work rather than just driving the numbers all the time and forgetting about the people within the business, because I don't think I've got the capabilities to run a business in that way, and I also just wouldn't enjoy it.
I just don't think you can. I think the reality is, you know, I mean, that's what some people do, but if you don't have, you know, a great environment, like I said, and consciously make that happen and be good to people and work hard and create this, like I said, frameworks for people to be themselves and contribute in the best way that they can. If you don't have that, you know, and that's something you have to work out, that just, you know, that has to continually adapt. You can't just drive a business by a spreadsheet as much as some people might profess to be able to do that. A company is a company of people at the end of the day, and that's what makes it work. So I totally get what you're saying.
No, great. And in terms of, I think there's been some great stuff that you've shared, both in terms of you as an individual and also the people within the business that have clearly got the business where it is today and given it a platform for growth. If you were thinking about kind of parting comments and any kind of words of wisdom around the people in the business and actually how you've made sure that you're maximizing their effectiveness, anything that if you were talking to someone at a similar stage to you a couple of years back, anything particularly you'd share with them to make sure they focus on?
I would say, going back to my point around really thinking hard about the qualities, the values, and the level of experience you need for individual roles, and consciously really thinking about that. And it's an impossible task to do this, but trying to think about the things that might crop up in the next 6 months before they happen. And if you don't know that, go and find someone that's been through it and talk to them in depth about it, because these are all well-trodden paths at the end of the day nowadays. This is building a big company is nothing new. It's obviously hugely exciting, but go and speak to people that have done it, because like I said, if you just go and get on with it, you'll fall into lots of mistakes. And yes, there's some good things to that, like you said, because you learn, but actually set yourself up for the best journey you can go on. So yeah, go and chat to some people and get some good advice before you go on the next step. That's probably my best bit of advice.
Yeah, no, brilliant. Thanks so much. And I'm sure hopefully people will learn from the advice you're giving them today. If it sounds like you're not a secret out there on the social media world, but if they do want to hunt you down and either join your journey or get some more advice, then what's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
Yeah, I'm Alex Packham pretty much on everything, whether it's LinkedIn, social, Instagram, etc. I would say if you probably don't ping me on LinkedIn, because I get a lot on there, but you ping me on any of my social websites or whatever, I'll be more than happy to have a chat with people.
Brilliant. No, thanks so much for your time once again, Alex, and I look forward to be able to share the advice you've given.
Thank you very much.